Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the Pro Physique Code podcast. So today is a little bit of a special episode. It is coming out on a Monday, so it is technically like a prep episode. But as you guys, if you guys are watching on YouTube, you probably have been able to tell Paul and Evan are not here today, and we have Coach Sarah instead. So what's up, Sarah?
Not too much, just hanging out and enjoying the last bits of summer here down in Atlanta. So, but yeah, I know you guys are bracing for the hurricane. It's Olympia week, so a lot going on in the world right now.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Yeah, and hopefully by the time this episode comes out, which will be next Monday, the Monday after the Olympia, hopefully, fingers crossed, I will have made it to Vegas on time because that's been a whole debacle with my flight. But yes, for those of you listening, us in Tampa, we are supposed to get hit pretty hard with a direct hurricane. So we shall see, because there's been hurricanes in the past that have been notorious for actually like moving a very last minute, either like south of us or north of us. So everybody's just, kind of preparing for the worst though.
Yeah, always good to be prepared with everybody. And obviously, with the past hurricanes that have just hit, like Helene and things like that, our thoughts and our prayers are with everyone going through that and the cleanup and stuff like that too. So, but yeah, no, thoughts and prayers are with you as you travel to Olympia. I'm excited to see what all happens with that this week and this weekend.
Oh my gosh, me too, me too. And so, okay, so for those of you listening, if you haven't caught on by the title of this episode, so Sarah is definitely much more equipped to talk about our topic today than the guys, Paul and Evan are, but we are going to be talking about breast augmentations. This is something Sarah and we both have gotten breast augmentations. We both competed with and without them. And we both get questions about this a lot, specifically from other competitors. I don't know about you, Sarah, but I tend to get questions from other competitors or other bodybuilders asking me about my experience because they feel like there's not a lot of knowledge out there regarding breast augmentations in athletes. So that's kind of what we're going to dive into in today's episode.
Yeah, no, I love that. I get questions a lot as well from people in the gym, even to like just normal lifestyle people as well, maybe even thinking about getting them as well. And then a ton of my, first time competitors and even seasoned competitors as well that I may not have had, and I'm not sure I'll go into this, I may not have had as much up there, or may not have realized that when they get stage lean, there's definitely not a lot left if they aren't genetically blessed. And some people are, and we definitely can talk about the different sizes and things like that, but they may have realized, oh, wait, this may actually be able to contribute to my physique. But again, we'll go into the whys and things like that too, and about how it definitely should not just be for competing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, let's kind of start with, we can both share a little bit about like backstory of when we got ours done, maybe a little bit of like the why behind that. And I guess I'll start by saying I got my breast augmentation at the end of 2020. It was like 2 days before Thanksgiving. I do remember that because it was during the year where obviously 2020, and I remember nobody could come in with me, and like they even made my mom wait outside for me because she was the one that like picked me up, and they like wheeled me out afterwards. But so I got mine at the end of 2020, and for me, it absolutely, I can confidently say, had nothing to do with competing. I was also at a time of my life, I was finishing up college, and I had not really even thought about like when I was going to compete next. And I just knew from a very young age that I wanted them. Like once I realized that I was not getting any bigger, and it like really became one of my biggest insecurities, especially as I got older, later in high school, college. Like I always knew I was going to get it done. My mom had hers done. So, I always knew I was going to get it done. It was just kind of a matter of like when, and I ended up doing it at the end of 2020. And I can confidently say I have absolutely no regrets. So that's kind of why I got mine done. It had nothing to do with competing. I do want to preface that. So, and that's also when I got mine done. So we're coming up on almost, I guess, 4 years with them, which is kind of crazy.
That's a long time. You don't think it's that long, but I think with COVID and everything like that too, I'm proud of you for getting it done during that point and being like, you know what? No, it's time. It's time to get it done. So, but for me, I got mine done a little bit after yours. I remember seeing honestly your YouTube recaps and things that of your experience. And honestly, it honestly helped me being like, okay, I've really been on my brain since I would say I was younger. Like, cause I was always the girl that wore like the training bras. I had stuffed my bras with like the Kleenex and everything under the sun when I was little because I was not genetically blessed in that area. I was always an athlete as well. I know you were too. I was a gymnast. I was a swimmer. And so being that athletic, I just didn't develop as much as I thought and hoped I wanted to be. And so definitely was also an insecurity that I had for a very long time. And I also just figured out like, hey, if I can improve this aspect of my life and, find a reputable surgeon and things like that, and just like kind of check all of my boxes, why not do it? Especially if it can have a positive impact on my confidence in myself and just, bringing just a more help, enhance my feminine shape. That's really what I wanted to be, is more confident.
Yeah, and that's what it came down to for me. Like there was nobody in my life that was like pressuring me into doing it. Like it was just strictly my choice, and it was something like I had always wanted. I thought about it long and hard for years and years. It was always an insecurity of mine. And that's something I always recommend. Like people who are considering getting it done, we can kind of get into like the why, like what your why should be. But I am a firm believer, like it is a major surgery at the end of the day. And I think you should put some thought into it before you just do it on a whim. Like if it's just a thought that pops in your brain one day and you just act on it, like I don't know if that's really the best approach to go about. But I think if it's always been something on your brain, weighing out the pros and the cons. And we'll talk a little bit too, as we get further along into this, like when we would recommend if you are a competitor to get them done. Cause I know I get a lot of questions about, hey, Lexie, would you recommend getting them done, right after prep, deep into an off season? Like what's the best time to do it? And I wish I could answer that question like as an athlete, but when I got mine done again, like I said, I wasn't in prep, wasn't anywhere near prep. I was kind of in like this limbo phase of not really knowing if and when I was going to compete again. So let's start talking about, how did you find your surgeon? And I'll kind of talk about how I found my surgeon.
Yeah, so I just honestly started with Google. And I just like, I live in Atlanta, so we have a lot of, obviously there's a lot of hospitals here, there's a lot of opportunities here for it. And so I just started, just Google mapping, searching and looking at the different reviews of people's and their experiences at different just locations and offices around Atlanta. And then I went and called a few locations just to see if I could get a consult. And so I did multiple consults, which I highly recommend, because you're going to get one doctor that says, oh, you need this. Another one says, oh, you need that, and stuff like that too. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like coaching. You're the client. And so I want to make sure that I had the right fit of what, kind of matching my vision for what I saw for myself, but also understanding what is actually possible with my frame and what actually could be feasible for me from a surgical standpoint. As far as just like the different profiles and things like that, I knew I wanted them to look a little bit more natural than some other people that I knew and things like that too. But I still wanted them to be an improvement and an enhancement of my femininity and things like that. And so I had, I think, 3 consults with 3 different doctors, and I went with the second one. Top to bottom, positive office experience, and the really good bedside manner, really connected, understood, also had worked with athletes before, not specifically bodybuilders, but I know that's a question sometimes too that I get as well. It's like, ask them who their clientele is, maybe even look at the reviews or see what you can see as far as, I know it's HIPAA and things like that, but if they can talk generally about the clientele that they work with, that would be cool too, to kind of get a background on them. But mine definitely did had experience working with athletes, which I liked a lot too.
Yeah, that was very important for me too. And actually, how I found my surgeon is there was a girl who went to my gym, and I had known her for a long time, and she actually got hers done. And we had very similar like starting points. We were very flat chested. And I remember seeing that she got hers done. And so I asked her, I was like, who did you use? What did you think of him? She had nothing but great things to say about him. So I scheduled a consult with him and went to him. And honestly, like I'm just like you, I think you should definitely do your research, schedule multiple consults if you want. But I just knew right off the get-go after meeting with him, I was like, all right, I feel really confident. I don't feel like I need to waste my time doing more research. He was awesome. His team was awesome. And the biggest thing was I knew somebody who had used him before I ended up getting my surgery done, and she had fabulous results. I loved the way hers looked, and she was also an athlete. So that was really important for me. And actually there's 2 other people that I know, specifically other bodybuilders, who after I got mine done, they are local to Tampa. They actually went to the same surgeon. So he's really great. So if anybody's listening and they're in Tampa and they want that referral, let me know. But yeah, I think it's important to do your research before getting a surgeon. And something else that I think is so important is having a surgeon who's very realistic with you in terms of like what is going to be feasible for your frame. Because I'll be very vulnerable in saying that so I have a very small frame, and like my surgeon asked what size I wanted, and I told him, and he basically kind of laughed in my face and was like, oh my God, no, I'm not going to be able to fit that in you. He's like, not going to be able to fit that in you. And I really respected that, because it's just like coaching. Like as coaches, we're going to tell you what you need to hear, and that may not always be what you want to hear. But at the end, you're going to appreciate it. And that's kind of, what I was thinking in terms of my surgeon. I was grateful that he was like, okay, Lexie, we need to have a little bit of a coming back down to earth and be a little bit more realistic here, because that just to me signified that he was willing to put like my health above all.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, mine was very realistic as well and very honest. And the cool thing was too, I'm sure you did this as well. Like they let you try on the size that you're going to get, or around about what size you're going to get actually in the office. So let me put it in to my bra, and they gave me a bra to put over it. The way I could like take pictures of it. The way I could also see like one with, one without. And I thought it was a very good, like hands-on process to visually see an example of what you possibly could be getting. And so I thought that was very helpful in me making a decision as well. And I like that, being down to earth, being very realistic, being very honest, because you're right too. It's like, this is a surgery to where it's like, you got to commit to it and this is what you get. And it's not like it's easily reversible or anything like that either. And so we want to make sure we're very confident and just like nailed down with a decision. And so once we did that, then we scheduled the surgery I think like 2 or 3 weeks later. And so I did mine in 2021. And so
Okay.
I was still like Daniel could not come back with me. I mean, he had to wait in the car, and it was still definitely still like COVID times, not like heart of COVID times, but it still was like the rules, at least in hospitals and things like that. So, but yeah, so I had a great experience too.
Yeah. And we can kind of go into, so the thing that I feel like a lot of people don't realize is that, like, I get a lot of people that will ask me what size implants I have. So I'll be very upfront. I have 415 cc's. However, I always tell people it doesn't really matter what size I have, because one thing I learned is, I mean, you could put 415 cc's in somebody who's 5'10", and then you have me who's like 5'2.5". It is going to look vastly different. So what I always recommend doing, and this is what I did, is look at like find some pictures that you like of people who have a size that you really like, right? Take that to your surgeon and show them that, because they're going to be able to tell you based off of your pictures and your frame what size implant is going to get you that look, right? That's one thing I did learn, because I used to be the person that would I was curious what other people's CCs were, and then I wanted to like match that. But I realized early on, like that has nothing to do with how you're going to look with the implants, because everybody has, a different profile, a different, width for their clavicle, and that makes a big difference. So I cannot recommend more. Just find some pictures of people that you like, take that to your surgeon, and then they will be able to tell you what size implant you probably need to get that look.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love those examples. And I think honestly, that reminds me of like taking pictures of and finding examples of your hair and makeup for show day.
Yeah.
And showing that to your makeup artist as well, as far as like, I want something like this. And they're a professional in the industry. And so I think those doctors can be very receptive and being very open of saying, okay, I don't know if that's realistic, but that is, and like have like 4 or 5 different options as far as like the looks and the shapes and like the profiles as well. I think it's very helpful. And maybe even finding something that's your relative body type or relative height, at least, I feel like too, could be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, one thing I did learn is like at the end of the day, if you have nothing to begin with, which literally was me, I mean, you can only go so thin. They can only stretch that skin so much. And I mean, that's why I really respected when my doctor was like, whoa, like 485 is probably not going to be able to fit them in you. Actually, he was like, Lexie, I think 385s are probably going to be the max we can go. But what he did is he took a couple different implant sizes into the surgical room and he knew I wanted him to go as big as he could safely. And then when I came out of my surgery, I remember opening my eyes, waking up, and he had told me he got the 415s in me. So I was like, yes. But no, I'm very happy with the way they look. I don't feel like to me, it's not too much, but it's enough. It's kind of what I wanted. So yeah, so I think finding pictures is a good way to go about things. Now, Sarah, you got under the muscle, correct? With your implants?
Yes, I did under the muscle, and I've only known a handful of people that have done over.
Yeah, I did under the muscle too. And actually my surgeon never even mentioned doing over the muscle. Not that I really wanted to endeavor that route anyways. I've seen, and I know some people that have done over the muscle. And to me, I feel like some people do it because it's a quicker recovery time. But it also, to me, it just, I wanted a little bit more of a natural look, and for it not to be so like obvious that I had an implant. So I've always been told that my surgeon specifically said under the muscle is going to get you a little bit more of a natural look. It is going to be a little bit lengthier of a recovery, but it's generally going to create a little bit more natural of a look because it's under the muscle. Whereas over the muscle, like you can just really tell when like that, you can tell that that implant is just sitting there, especially when you get really lean, like stage lean.
Yes. Have you ever seen the ripple of them when you've gotten that lean? That's
You know,
it's gross.
yeah, you know what? I will say, whenever I hit my front pose, like when I'm super, super stage lean and I hit my front pose, my chest muscle like naturally kind of like flexes a little bit. So you can see a little bit of like a weird kind of like ripple, I guess you could say, in one of them. But like naturally, no, I've never seen rippling. But I do feel like with over the muscle, it's a lot more obvious that they're fake when you get to that level of like stage leanness.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've only seen it maybe a couple of times, and you're right, though. It's only in that like center of the chest area when you hit the front pose and you twist, and it just like shows a little bit. I'm like, oh, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, is that it? Oh
Yeah.
crap. Okay, we're lean.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I did under the muscle. I know some surgeons actually do. I've heard some people recently getting like, I don't know the technical term for it, but like they'll get like half under the muscle, like half over, or like it's like a hybrid of over the muscle, under the muscle.
Hmm.
So I know some people that have done that, but I mean, I think, just trusting your surgeon, finding somebody you trust, and then, explaining to them that if you are a bodybuilder, explaining that this is a part of your life and you want to be able to train, because I think that will probably sway them towards, suggesting something in particular for you. Because we can kind of segue into talking about recovery time as well and training, because I know that's a big thing I always get asked. And I feel like it's a little bit different for everybody, because I feel like there's probably some things you can do, Sarah, that I can't do. So let's talk about when you got yours done. What did your recovery afterwards look like?
So I actually had to like go back and actually look because I actually forgot
Yeah.
about it. I was just like, how long was I out? And
Yeah.
so it was 4 weeks strict, no training at all.
Okay.
I couldn't, for the first 2 weeks, I couldn't get my heart rate above a certain point just to make sure my actual body was healing. After 4 weeks, I could train lower body. After 6 weeks, I could train upper body. And so, that was honestly, I was okay with that because for the first legit like week, I didn't know what day it was. I was just kind of just healing and resting and wanting to rest, and had my follow-up appointment to make sure that they were actually healing properly. That went well. And then he's like, okay, you can start taking some walks if you want to, but nothing like too strenuous. And so I know a lot of clients ask, how do you fill that time? How do you fill that void of exercising? Number one, rest, because your body needs to heal for
Yeah.
sure, because you had major surgery. I don't care what people say. Like you said, it's major surgery. And so we have to recover, we have to heal. And so I took walks when I could outside for like stress management, get some sunshine, listen to some music. Occasionally, if I felt the itch, I would go to the gym and just like flat walk. But I really didn't do anything or honestly want to do anything until maybe like the third and a half week. And by then was only less than a week before I could get back in the gym again. And so for me mentally, it was not that difficult of a recovery because I kind of planned for it. I knew what I wanted to do and I knew how I wanted to fill the time with some walks, with some sunshine, with some sleep. And I knew this is what my body needed. And so I think having a coach possibly through that process can be helpful too. I've coached a couple of girls through it, and they are definitely worried about like, am I going to lose muscle? Am I going to be, itching for the gym? I'm like, if you're interested in the gym, just go walk, so you still be a part of
Right.
that world. But you just don't want to go in there and mess things up because it's a significant monetary investment. We don't want to jeopardize anything. So, and it also it's 4 weeks, guys. Like it's not that long.
Yeah. And like full disclosure, this sounds so silly, but like part of why, like I mentioned at the beginning, I always knew I was going to get them done eventually, but like I was always telling myself, I'm like, I don't know how I'll go about like just resting for 4 weeks. Cause like I am such, even if I'm not at the gym, I'm just a very like fidgety person. Like I am always moving. Anybody who knows me, like my family even tells me all the time, they're like, you just don't sit down. But I was so worried about that. But like you said, Sarah, it's like when you pay for that, you're like, at least for me, I did not want to screw things up, right? Like I was not going to try and go and lift. And I actually really struggled the first couple of weeks, like even with certain things like opening up heavy doors or like even getting into the car and like putting on my seatbelt and like, having that range of motion on the steering wheel. I know that sounds really silly, but like that was really hard. And even for me, like at the grocery store, if I needed to reach something really high up, I remember I couldn't really do that. I had a hard time like lifting my arms. Now, granted, like I do feel like my recovery was a little bit more intense than some people's that I've heard about. So like everything I'm saying, I don't say that to scare anybody, but I do feel like because I was so flat chested to begin with, and because the implant like was so tight in me, that probably led to having a bit of a slower recovery. But my surgeon said the same thing as yours, Sarah. It was like 4 weeks. He's like nothing. And actually, I don't know about you, but I remember the first like 2 weeks, like anytime I tried to like talk really loud or like get my heart rate up, it would actually kind of hurt. Like I could feel like my chest was kind of tender. So I had to be really careful because I literally remember doing client check-ins like the next day, which was kind of stupid of me. But I attempted to do them. And I remember I was like talking in this like really like quiet monotone voice because it hurt to like be super loud. And it's like that was something I never, never even thought about.
Yeah, exactly. And with your like tightness question as well, I definitely felt that the first couple of weeks too. And they were like very high and very tight against my chest. And I was just like, is this how they're gonna stay? Because I can't like take deep breaths. And my doctor, the follow-up was just like, no, they're gonna settle into their natural position. You just got to give them like, 6 to 8 weeks to be able to do that. And then you'll definitely start to feel a little bit less of that tightness. And so I was like, okay, cool. So it definitely kind of reduce itself over time, but giving your body that time and that rest, I think is absolutely critical. And then getting back in the gym, my first week back in the gym was kind of like a deload as far as the training is concerned. I didn't try to go back and hit PRs because also like, you're a little bit, you're a little bit sore because, you haven't been in the gym for a little bit and things like that, but just taking it slowly when you're getting back into it, I think is one of the best things I can tell people is like, take your time because your body has been through a lot. It's been through traumatic experience. You've been out of the gym for a little bit too. So like the first few days, just do like warm-ups and body weight stuff and then get back underneath the barbell for like normal hip thrusts. And then when you feel up to it, obviously when you're cleared, following all the doctor's advice as far as like upper body training is concerned too.
Yeah, yeah. And I even know, so like my doctor was very much so just like after 4 weeks, he's like, just kind of ease back into it. But I do know for me, upper body, like the first week back, I was like, whoa, like I could barely do anything. And it wasn't that it hurt, it was just that it felt really, really weird. Like I vividly remember having 5 pound dumbbells and doing lateral raises. And I was like, if it just felt weird, it didn't hurt, but it just felt weird and it almost felt wrong. So, easing back into things I think is key. And something that I did that you said, like you kind of did something similar is during those 4 weeks where I like really couldn't lift or anything, once I felt fine and I could like walk, which truth be told, that was you after like the first couple of days, once the anesthesia wore off, I was fine to like walk at a slow pace where I wasn't getting my heart rate up. But what I would actually do is because like I'm such a creature of habit and routine, is rather than just having that like big void in the day of when I would normally go to the gym, that's when I would usually like go outside. I'd put on a podcast and I would just like go on a leisure walk during that time. And then eventually I did end up going to like the gym just to walk on the treadmill, get like that atmosphere that I wanted. So that's kind of how I managed those 4 weeks. And then I just stayed busy. Like, I always tell people, if you have another hobby that like you don't normally have time for, utilize the extra rest for that. Maybe it's like starting an Etsy shop, or maybe it's, I don't know, like knitting or something. Like just if you have an extra hobby, it's a great time to kind of put that in place of the gym time while you have to be out. But I'm curious, so now that like we have both had our implants for years and years now, is there anything in the gym that you feel like you still can't do, or anything you stay away from in particular with your training?
Yeah, I think primarily this is probably the common answer, just chest in general. We don't typically need it for bikini anyways, which is nice, but I think for life in general, I didn't really train a ton of chest even when I wasn't specifically training for bodybuilding competitions. And so I like, if I was an in-person trainer for 5 years, and so I got them when I was still an in-person trainer. And so I did have to demonstrate a couple of things after my recovery and things like that. And so I just try to be very gentle if I had to demonstrate like a push-up on body weight or against a Smith machine or a flat dumbbell bench press or an incline bench press. I was just very careful. I got the lightest dumbbells and I just did it, or I would just do it demonstrating it with like the air and just doing it body weight wise to where I didn't sacrifice it, because that still feels weird to this day as far as the chest is concerned.
Yes.
And so I'm just careful with that. I think sometimes sometimes pull-ups and lat pull-downs feel weird, but I think it depends upon maybe the handle that I'm using, or my grip. I think I notice sometimes that the grip is a little bit weird for me, but that's typically the only things I stay away from. What about you?
Yeah, so same with chest. I do not train direct chest. I even like don't really do anything heavy like incline pressing. Like I could do maybe like very light incline pressing, but I do not isolate my chest. I can actually not do body weight pull-ups or body weight tricep dips. That is something like that feels beyond weird. Like actually just hanging without any assistance feels really odd to me. Like feels like there's a weird stretch and pull with the chest. Now I can do like assisted pull-ups all day long, but just like doing unassisted pull-ups I cannot do. But pretty much everything besides like direct chest work and then unassisted pull-ups and tricep dips I can do. Push-ups still feel really funky, like I can do them, but they just feel kind of weird. And to me, like I have seen too many bodybuilders get their boobs done and then over time develop like a big gap in between them. And I think a lot of times that is induced from training. So like if you do go back and you try to, you're training chest and whatnot, I think that that is that susceptibility for those implants like splitting. And I don't want that at all. And so that's why I'm just really careful with what I do. And it is nice given that like in bikini, we don't necessarily need direct like pec work. I mean, it is nice to have maybe a little bit just for like where the delt inserts to the pec, but overall you can generally get away with direct chest work as a bikini athlete.
Yeah, exactly. And you can train around it too. Some of my competitors that have implants can't they may not be able to do lat pull downs correctly. And so it's just like, hey, let's just maybe do a cable pullover or something
Yeah.
like that. Something else to still hit the back width and things like that too. Or if like, hey, if we still want something roundedness in that front delt where the chest is, maybe let's do like a dumbbell front raise, like with a hammer grip or something like that. So there is definitely ways that we can definitely work around it to still hit the muscle groups that we might need to create that shape. But it may, just kind of just listening to the client and just seeing kind of where they are with their recovery or how long ago they had them or what they've been doing kind of in between that too.
Yeah, yeah. Always want to be safe. I would never want to like ruin something, that I paid for like that. But yeah, I remember like lat pull downs were really hard for me to do at first, but then just like the more I did them, and same with unassisted, or I'm sorry, assisted pull-ups, it felt really weird at first, but like over time it felt a lot better the more I did that movement pattern. Now I'm curious. So the question I always get, I'm curious like what you tell your clients, Sarah, because I'm sure you've gotten this question before. When do you feel like is like the best time, if you think there's a best time for a competitor to get a breast augmentation if they're interested?
Yeah, that's a great question, honestly. I definitely get that a lot. And it's actually one of the questions that I got when I posted my Instagram box. And so I would say personally for me, it worked really well when I was in an improvement season, when I was nowhere near to contest prep at all, because that shape, I think I had a little more body fat in my chest area for them to work with as well. And so I feel like if I was leaner, then they may not have had as much skin or as much stuff to work with down there than they, would have if I had, 15 more pounds on me and things like that in an improvement season. And also, I think too, I didn't have any food focus. I didn't have any worries about like nutrition or recovery. I didn't slash my calories at all. I never recommend doing that during a breast augmentation or surgery because you still need that fuel for the recovery and the healing process. And obviously we know that, going to the gym doesn't burn that many calories anyways. And so I think improvement season is probably one of the better times to get it done. Obviously, I understand the need like post show, but maybe finish your reverse, see how you're feeling too, and just feel a little bit better. Because again, if you've just gone through a contest prep, we know the post show blues are real. We know the reverse diet's hard. But if you want to focus on that as a next goal, I'd say let's get up to maintenance, get you feeling good in the gym again, get some PRs done first, and then maybe look at doing it if the timing works out. But I understand sometimes people are constricted with like maybe time of year, work stuff, family stuff, and things like that. But I'd say ideally improvement season. What
Yeah,
about you?
I would definitely agree with that. Don't get them in prep. I would not get them in prep. That would just kind of be silly. And I wouldn't get them directly post show either, because like you said, you're so lean. And I don't think most surgeons really want to operate either on somebody who's so lean. And plus, like, what happens if you get implants when you're so lean? And then let's say you end up gaining back some body fat, and it also you gain some back in your, breast tissue. And then that's gonna like, what happens if you're like, oh damn, like I'm way bigger than I wanted to be up top, right? So I would definitely wait. I would say if we were to give like a time, maybe 2 months post show before kind of giving them like give give yourself some time to get your body healthy again post show. Do a little bit of reverse dieting, and then then maybe endeavor getting them like 2 months post show. That's kind of what I feel like would be best. And then you definitely want to probably be in the midst of a longer off season if you're going to get it done, because even though you may only have to take 4 weeks away from the gym, that does not by any means mean you're going to go back and feel like a beast in the gym right away. Like it's going to probably take like I would say 6 to 10 weeks to feel pretty normal in the gym again, especially with upper body. So that's something you have to consider.
Exactly, exactly. And so I think, I mean, we're OCD type A people. So planning is one of our fortes. And so I think if you can definitely plan it appropriately where you do have that time on both sides, because I think you're right, Lexi. A lot of people don't actually realize the post recovery time once you're back in the gym. Because I think you're right, though. It took me like 2 months at least to feel like hitting PRs again in the gym, specifically for upper body and stuff like that. So it does take some time for sure. And so the longer you have, which is the best part of our sport, is improvement season, in my opinion, as far as like the more time you have, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you want to get into you want to do some like rapid fire questions? Because I know you got some questions. Do you want to start with some of those?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the easiest one, and you can answer this one, Lexi, is this required to do a show?
Oh my gosh, no. I should have said that at the beginning. No, 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 no. I think that a lot of people think though that you have to have them to do well, but like let's be honest, most, especially like pros, have them. So like when you see the majority of people having them, you think that you need them to do well, but absolutely not. I mean, look at Laura Lee Chapados. She doesn't have them. And like I think that there are ways you can go about stuffing your suit that create a little bit more fullness up top, because you do want to look a little bit fuller up top for just balance purposes, but that doesn't mean you have to go and get a breast augmentation. I mean, the way I look at it is you're not going to compete for forever, but you're going to have your implants for forever, right? So if you're just getting them for competing purposes, what's going to happen when you're done competing? What if you don't want them anymore?
Exactly. Exactly. And then next one, I think we both maybe have different answers on this. Scale of 1 to 10, how bad was the pain after for the recovery process?
With 10 being like absolutely excruciating, I would say for me, I would like say the first 2 days. I did not take pain meds though. Was like I would say like a 7.5. Like there were some times where it was really painful the first 48 hours. And then after that, I was like, I would say the first 2 to 3 days, it was pretty painful, like 7.5 with no pain meds. And then after that, it was just more like tender, and I just had to be careful with like my range of motion. It would hurt if I like moved my arms a certain way. Like I even remember washing my hair was really hard at first, like for the first couple of weeks, believe it or not, just from like lifting my arms up and applying that pressure. But I'd say like a 7.5 for me the first couple of days.
Yeah, I think so as well. If I remember, I think I took my pain meds maybe the first 2 days, and then I weaned off of them because it made me feel a little weird. But I definitely realized when I was a little bit late for one of them, because I was walking downstairs to make some food, and I was like, oh, I'll just eat, then I'll take it. And
Uh-huh.
then all of a sudden I started like walking around, like getting stuff out of the cabinets, and I was like, okay, I need it right now. And I was just
Yes.
like, because I felt like almost like, I don't know, I felt really tight, really heavy. And then I think I started freaking myself out. And I was like, I don't
Yeah.
want to pass out. Let's just drink a protein shake and then have it real quick. And so I would probably agree with the 7.5. Again, not the worst pain in the world, but you're right though. It definitely comes in waves. And I think too, the
Yeah.
more you move around too. So I think
Yeah.
just like planning a few days in bed, planning someone to be with you. Cause I think you said your mom was with
I
you as well to like
yeah.
drive you and stuff like that too was
Yeah,
key.
yeah, because you can't drive the first couple of days. I mean, especially with anesthesia in general, it's going to take you a couple days to feel normal again. So yeah, I mean, I am very stern and like independent, but like I would not have like just come home alone. I think you definitely should have somebody there for you for at least like the first 3 days.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Because by day 3, then it's like, okay, the first day I had Daniel helping me to get out of bed to like, because you don't realize you actually use your chest muscles to get to like sit
Yes.
up on the bed to go into the
Yes.
bathroom. So
Yes.
I literally had to call him. I was
Absolutely.
like, Daniel, I got to go to the bathroom. He's like, what? I'm like, I can't get out of bed.
Yep. 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 You need help with the simplest things. Yes.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So, next one, we kind of mentioned it a little bit. They kind of had three questions like pricing, location of surgeon, and then like lifting changes. So I think we covered
Okay.
like location where we got it done, and then
Yeah.
like lifting changes. But pricing, if you want to discuss, I think like a round thing for me, I think mine were between 6 and 8,000.
Okay. Yeah. Mine were about, I want to say before the medication, which wasn't that much, we'll say like $100. I think it was like 5,600. I know that my surgeon did offer like monthly payment options, but I was just kind of big on like if I was going to do this surgery, I wanted to be able to just pay it up front. So that was what mine ranged around. But I know like my mom, for example, when she got hers done, years before I got mine done in St. Louis, I think it was like 8,000. So there can be a range. And I encourage people who are wanting to get theirs done, like don't just shop around for the cheapest surgeon. Mine ended up being pretty inexpensive, but he was great. But I definitely would not skimp on the price.
For sure. Exactly. Again, it's a major surgery. You're doing a lot of things to your body internally. It's a big process, long
Yeah.
process. So yeah, definitely, make sure you're investing in the right person. Another question that I got, which actually is, I think is a pretty interesting one. Is it recommended to get show lean at least once to know an appropriate cup size?
That is a great question. I don't think I've ever really been asked that before. I mean, I certainly think it could help, right? I mean, because I feel like everybody's a little bit different. Some people do carry a little bit more body fat in their breast tissue, so their size fluctuates a lot depending on if they're stayed clean or not. In my case, it literally didn't matter. I was like flat as a board, but like I don't think that would hurt at all. Just to kind of see like where you are at that stage level of leanness. I mean, I would say if you can do that, yeah.
I agree. I agree. I think it's definitely more of the difficult to answer questions, but I think you're right though. I think knowing kind of where you hold your body fat, how your body loses body fat, because we know that we can't control where we lose it. And so I think that can be helpful as far as just like, yes, if you are considering it, obviously not completely for competing, but if it's going to be something that you're doing while you're in your competing phase of your life, then sure, it can be helpful. And then obviously if you like what you are as far as improvement season shape and things like that as well, and you think that it can definitely enhance it, go for it. So
Yeah. Yeah. That was a good question.
for sure. That's at least all the ones that I had on the Instagram. Did you get
Okay.
any to yours?
I did get a couple. Let me just pull them up. Okay. So some of them we already answered though. So how long between surgery and weight training? So like we kind of talked about 4 weeks for our surgeons. Now I have heard other surgeons say different things. I've heard some surgeons say 6 weeks. I've had some ladies be told that they can go back and train light lower body after 2 weeks, but like to me, I know I would have not been in a position in 2 weeks out to go and train, like because things as simple as like picking up weight, like even if you are going to train lower body, like picking up the plates, picking up the dumbbells feels kind of hard to do because you use your chest for so much more than I think you think. Like even, I don't know about you, Sarah, but I just like remember the first night after my surgery, I slept out on the couch because like I just kind of needed to sleep like somewhat upright for the first night. And I remember I was the only one awake and I needed like, I really was thirsty and I needed a drink, but I couldn't open like the cap of my water. And I was like, oh, I was screwed. I'm like, what do I do? Right. Like even things as like simple as opening up the cap of your water for the first couple of days is hard. But yeah, so it took about 4 weeks for both of us to get back to weight training. Somebody asked thoughts on getting them pre-kids. I might want another kid, but want boobs too. LOL. So that's a good question because like neither of us has kids. And I do know that especially like if you have kids and you breastfeed, that can definitely change, the overall look of your breast tissue in general, whether it be like you lose a little bit. So that's a hard question. I feel like I'm not the right person to answer that. But I feel like I know people who have gotten breast implants after kids and before kids, and it doesn't ever seem like they have too big of an issue. I would say one thing I would consider with that is if you feel like you're going to have kids again, be maybe a little bit more conservative with the size, because I know a lot of ladies, when they do have kids and they have breast implants, if they already have really big breast implants, they feel like they are humongous when they are pregnant again and when they are producing breast milk. So that may just be something to consider. But I'd bring that up to your surgeon as well.
For sure, yeah, and I think that's a great question for your doctor, like you said, Lexi. But I also like think I've also known people that have done it before kids, had kids, and then maybe done like a lighter modification to them. Maybe not necessarily an augmentation, maybe it's a lift, or maybe it's some other shape work that they wanted to do because we know it does change the nature of your breast tissue once you have kids and things like that as well. And so I would just say that's definitely a personal choice, but talk to your doctor and see what the options are, and maybe even talk to other friends, maybe as well, kind of reference points too.
Yes, yes, absolutely. No, that was a good question. Now, other question that I got that we haven't answered. So we kind of touched on this, but somebody asked under the muscle or above the muscle, which one is better aesthetically and function wise? So I think when you ask which one is better aesthetically, it's going to be a very person dependent question. For me personally, I just like the way under the muscle looks better. And that's why I got under the muscle. I wanted a bit more of like a natural look. I don't know. What do you think, Sarah?
I agree. And I wasn't as familiar with this because I had heard people do it until I actually asked my doctor. And then he showed me examples of both as far as like different sizes on different body types and things like that. And I was like, oh, I like the look of this one. He's like, well, that's under. I'm like, perfect. Okay. So I think it definitely comes down to a personal decision. And also too, like maybe what availability of what muscle you have. Maybe people don't have enough muscle there to go under. I think that was one thing that he did mention, that as far as like availability of the muscle there too. So if you're maybe someone that doesn't train regularly, maybe not have as much muscle built up in that area, maybe going over is your only option. And so I think definitely talking and maybe seeing what would be the best fit for you, literally. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Because I recall my surgeon said something along the lines of like he had to break some of my like muscle or something when he put them in, which could be why I had such a kind of like a more painful recovery. But he kept saying like the implant didn't want to go in; it just kept wanting to like push out and slide out. So, and I'm curious, like that reminds me too. How long did your surgery take? Because I know that breast augmentations are supposed to be pretty short surgeries, like an hour tops. But I'm curious, how long did yours take? Did it take around that time?
I think so. I think it was like 90 minutes when from like anesthesia, we're like, hey, you're gonna go to sleep now. And I'm like, peace. And then I woke back up again very groggy and not knowing what day
Yeah.
it was, and that was fun. And so, but the ladies were super nice. They're always the nicest nurses once you wake
Yes.
up and everything. Like, here, drink this juice box. You're definitely low on food. But
Right.
yeah, I think it was about 90 minutes or so. But you said yours was a lot longer because maybe they had issues with the implants.
Yes. So it's funny because my surgeon, the way he did it was he was like, so I scheduled the surgery and I knew for a while like what date my surgery was going to be on. I just didn't know the time. They said the day before my surgery, the office would call and tell me my specific time, right? So my time was at 2. I think it was like 2, right? So I was like his last surgery of the day. And I kind of think that he did that purposely because I feel like maybe he thought I was going to be a little more high maintenance because I remember it took like 3 hours, believe it or not, because my poor mother, like we talked about, like it was during the COVID year, so she couldn't actually come in. So I just remember she had told me she was like waiting outside the parking lot for like 2 hours, and she's like, I had to pee so bad, and they were so nice, and they let me in, thankfully. But yeah, it took about 3 hours, but that's not the norm. So it's supposed to, I think, be a pretty easy surgery, and like not. I think they say like the actual surgery, like this isn't including like the anesthesia and the wake up time and all that, but I think they say it only takes like 30 to 45 minutes.
I think that's what my doctor said as well. He said it's going to take longer than that, but typically, like you're in the needle or like opened up for like that amount of time. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. 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 Well, I mean, that wraps up the questions I have. And I feel like we answered all the other common questions like I wanted to make sure we got to. Is there anything else you can kind of think of that you think is important for the listeners to like consider or hear before we wrap up this episode?
Hmm. Honestly, I think we covered everything because I really wanted to cover like the whys behind it, the competing, the training, the recovery, the surgery itself, and planning for it. And I think we covered kind of all pieces. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. And hopefully this serves as like a good resource if you are somebody curious about it or considering it. There's lots of pros and cons to consider, but hopefully this was a pretty straightforward resource. And hopefully it's helpful too, coming from both of us who are bodybuilders. Like we're, training wise, we're fine now. I discuss my training restrictions, but it's not like it's that much. I still feel like I can lift and do the majority of like everything I want to do. It's really just with the exception of direct chest work and like pull-ups and tricep dips, but I can get by without, doing all of those things. So yeah, but honestly, I have no regrets. I am very careful with like the way I train though, so that they don't like, split. And I think that is important if you're going to get them. I mean, you have to realize you do have to kind of be careful with your training afterwards. Like if you're somebody who is a power lifter and you love bench pressing, like you may have to consider that if you get them done, you may have to give that up. Or if you continue to do that with implants, you're probably going to be one of those people that ends up having the implants like bottom out or split, and they're going to end up looking kind of wonky. So you just have to kind of consider what you are willing to, I guess, potentially put away if you do get them, such as like if you are somebody that loves bench pressing.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's more of like a timing issue about like maybe, hey, maybe if that's the case, you have your powerlifting seasons, and then when that is no longer like when you retire from that, great, that'd be a great time to get them if you want to plan it that way and things like that too. So I think you figuring out your priorities and things like that too, because I know for me this definitely was a big priority for me, and I was like just trying to figure out the timing of it, and like I prepped in 2020, and so I knew that I wanted to be definitely removed from a prep and in a longer improvement season, and so I knew I wasn't going to get on stage again for at least 2 years at that point. So I was like, perfect, this is a great time to get it all kind of worked out, kind of like finance wise and timing wise and recovery wise, to where it made the most sense then. And I understand that's like the perfect, world. We don't have to wait for everything to be perfect, but I think that there is a lot of elements of planning that people may not consider up front of being like, yes, I want them. Like, great, you want them. We just got to put some more pen to paper and kind of figure things out as you go along.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a big decision, for your body, but also financially too. That's why, I kind of said at the beginning, I would like personally, if you're considering getting them, do lots of research beforehand. Like if it's just a thought that you've like thought of the past week, like I would not act on it that quickly. Like I'd let it kind of stir and ponder for a while. It's just, to ensure that like, okay, 6 months from now, if you still feel as eager to get them, then maybe you go after it, right? Just to ensure it's not just like this one, type of phase. Because again, I want to emphasize, you do not have them to compete. You do not have them to do well in competing. I mean, like I said, use Laura Lee Chapados, for example. She doesn't have them. I don't think don't quote me, but I don't think she's talked about having any ambition to get them. And she clearly does just fine. She, wears a proper suit top, she stuffs it, and she gets by just fine.
Exactly. I think I used for my first show ever in 2017, I think I used stuffed animal stuffing in my
Yeah.
suit. That was also a popular one. And I know Paul's a fan of like the dry rice and the
Yes.
pantyhose
Yes.
as well. So I think both of those things are, if you're thinking about getting them, but maybe you're in a prep right now, you can still do some things. And I know Angel has some good tops as well, as far as like the inserts and stuff too.
Yeah. They have lots of insert options like silicone inserts. So there's a lot that these suit companies like that you can get to put in your suit to kind of stuff it. Because I mean, another thing too is like if you get implants, I mean, I've seen it before, girls getting too big of implants and then it almost throws off their proportions when they're on stage, right? So like there's a healthy, happy medium there. But yeah, you definitely don't have to have them to do well. I think that a lot of people just think that because when you look at a lot of the top pros, a lot of them do have them, but it's not necessary.
Exactly. But you're right though. It can enhance the shape, but there's other options out there, that suit companies can help you with too, to still enhance your shape and still do very, very well on stage.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, this was a good episode. I think we covered everything. And like I said, I hope this is really helpful for those of you guys listening. If it is, we would really appreciate you to share this episode. I can't think of a lot of other podcasts that have talked about this specifically for competitors. So please share this, tag us. We would love to see that. And thank you for being on today, Sarah.
Yes, no, thank you for having me. I'm glad it all worked out for a good girl chat.
Yes, love the girl chats. Love them. All right. Well, I hope that wherever you guys are at in the world, you have a great rest of your day, and we will catch you in the next episode.